So about a year and a half ago, me, Michael, and our third brother, Steven, got together. It was sometime around Christmas. I don't remember. But we sit down at the table and we have this conversation. And we realize that all three of us have these things that we want to pursue, these dreams that we've had that we've never really worked on, we've just talked about. By the end of the conversation, we swore this blood oath to each other that we would begin working on all of these things, actually do them. So on the show, me and Michael have talked about our pursuits for a long time. Like, I want to make this independent art. Michael wants to build a spaced repetition app. And Steven, the third brother, has his own goals. Today, we have the third brother, Steven, on the show, and we are very excited to have him here. I think it'll be really cool to kind of get this other point of view from someone that's kind of been on the same timeline as us. I think it'll be really cool. But how about we start out with Steven? Maybe you just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, sure. I'm the third brother and the youngest of the family. And for the last 10 years or so, I've been working as an engineer on large private yachts, traveling around the world, living on board, and going to crazy places in the Mediterranean, Caribbean, west coast of the US, all over the place. And even at the end there, I had 6 months off a year paid. I was making a really good salary, and I quit all of that. I moved back home with mom and dad, and I started going back to school. I also started a fully electric, solar-powered lawn care company, and I just recently bought a 60-year-old transit bus, and I'm converting that into a mobile coffee shop.
And the solar lawn care and the bus were the things that you mentioned at the table, right? Like that was the thing you wanted to do. No?
No. One of the main things I wanted to do, I haven't gotten to yet, but there was the solar powered lawn care company that I really wanted to try out, see if it would work. And that was on the table. The coffee shop was something else. The bus came around later.
Right. And this bus is the bus from Speed, right?
Yes.
It's got the big fishbowl.
Yeah, they nicknamed it the fishbowl because of just giant glass windows everywhere. It's from basically the same bus from the movie Speed. It's 60 years old. The thing weighs 20,000 pounds or more. It can fit like 45 passengers, and I managed to buy it and drive it across the state of Florida a couple weeks ago.
Which you have a video on if anyone is interested.
Yes, I finally edited and posted a video on it on my YouTube channel, Delta V Coffee. So Delta V Coffee.
Okay, and then let's get this out of the way because there's a couple.
Sure.
You've started sharing things more publicly, so you have the YouTube channel Delta V Coffee.
Yeah, for the last year and a half, I've been running the solar powered electric lawn care company. However, I just recently started the YouTube channel for it, and that's Solarpunk Steve. So I started simultaneously 2 YouTube channels about these 2 different endeavors within the last 2 or 3 weeks.
We will say and forget to put these in the YouTube description. So
I'll remind you. It's okay. I also have Instagrams for both endeavors too. Yeah, cool. We can put all that down below.
So I think I want to know kind of the journey from Yacht Steven to Solarpunk and Delta V Steven. I'm wondering if we can talk sort of, when did you come up with these ideas, and when did you decide to act on them? Or like, because that's a massive change, going from yachting with a great salary and seeing amazing places all over the world to mowing lawns. Like,
Yes, it's a very big change. Good question. There was never a single moment where, these 2 things hit me and I wanted to do them right away, and that's why I left. Most of this has been brewing for a long time, different projects, different ideas. I always have ideas. I always want to do something. And the yachting thing that I got into worked really well at the time that I got into it. And, I had fun. I enjoyed a lot of it, but I was also miserable towards the end there. Michael, you can probably attest to this. We used to play video games together every now and again online. And, I remember a couple times hopping on there, you guys were like, Stephen, you sound kind of depressed. And it was true. I was miserable. I even got 6 months paid off a year. I was seeing these crazy places and I was just absolutely miserable on board. There's a lot to go into. I probably won't get to all of it, but there were things that just were really difficult to deal with on board. So I've always wanted to do something different. And there's a separate project that I've worked on a lot over the last couple of years, but ultimately kind of set aside for now. And I'll hopefully get back to that. But the solar powered lawn care business was actually something that, I've been traveling around on these yachts. They are incredibly polluting, like unbelievably polluting. It's easy to look at them from the outside and see this shiny white boat, floating on the water, and it looks amazing. And, these billionaires are taking them around the world, and it just looks like the ultimate thing. Well, everything that goes into building the boat, maintaining the boat, getting the boat to and from locations was just a massive, massive, huge pollution. And that I hated that. I hate that kind of thing. And I wanted to do something to actually help society and, the planet that I care about. And being on a boat, you see just how big of an impact you have on the locations you're in. So we're in these beautiful, pristine waters and, just dumping tons and tons of like carbon into the air. Despite the fact that you have sewage treatment systems, there's stuff, just going into the water. There's oil leaking from things. The owners are flying their private jets to and from the boat while the boat then travels across the ocean and burns 40,000 gallons of diesel. So there are some insane things that happen there.
I've obviously heard this rant before,
Yes.
but
Yes.
when you really kind of put it in numbers, it's easy to hear, yeah, these boats, they pollute a lot, but when you actually get down to like 40,000 gallons, it's kind of mind-blowing. I remember you showing me in the engine room this exhaust pipe. I want to say it was like, I don't know, 20 something inches in diameter. It's just this massive thing that just runs straight through the floor into the ocean. You're like, that's where all our stuff goes. Right down into the ocean.
One of the boats I worked on at full speed, each engine would burn 120 gallons of diesel an hour.
That's wild.
Yeah, so at full speed, we were burning 240 gallons of diesel an hour. We had 45,000 gallons on board. We would basically go through that on a crossing across the Atlantic Ocean. So we would go across the ocean. The owner would fly their private jet across the ocean. Then we would do a trip around the Mediterranean, that kind of thing. And then the owner would fly back to wherever, and we would take the boat back. So there's just a massive amount of consumption essentially around one person. So anyway, this feeling developed over time of no matter how hard I'm working, no matter how successful I am in my career, I'm working for someone else, and it's basically to support their use of a toy. This thing exists not to benefit anyone other than one person and, their enjoyment, their leisure, that kind of thing. So I wanted to do something different, and I always have ideas, so I needed to get out of that, and it's really hard to leave that lifestyle. It's so much easier to stay in it because you're making good money, you're moving around, absolutely everything is paid for. You don't pay for toothpaste, you don't pay rent, you're getting food from 5-star chefs every single day. So it's hard to leave that. So my number one goal was get out of yachting and do it as quickly as I can, as simply as I can. And also work towards these bigger goals I have of making an impact on things. And the first thing that came to mind, if I can get started with this right away, is lawn care. But I don't want to just go and mow yards with a gasoline powered, lawnmower and, make a couple dollars here and there. It's like, I want to try something that I haven't seen anyone else do. And I want to see if this can work. And so I wanted to do fully electric. I had already bought a Tesla Model Y. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to tow the trailer with this car. And I want to get a trailer that I can put solar on top of. And I want to charge up a battery on board and see if I can charge my equipment on board and go out and mow people's lawns and figure out if I can run this completely on solar power. And that's how I got started in this idea, and I've slowly been building and building, and I just now launched the YouTube channel to share that experience and help encourage others to do the same, or just allow people to see whether or not it would work for them.
And just to let's talk about the lawn care thing for a little bit, because
Sure.
it's pretty interesting here. So first off, how unique is that? Are there other people out there doing the same thing that you're doing? Are you kind of off the map a little bit? Obviously, electric lawn care isn't something you've invented, but
No.
the trailer with the electric car with the solar panels and an inverter and a battery, like that's a pretty elaborate setup.
So one of my YouTube comments, I think basically referred to me as next level. I've seen others out there with electric lawn care equipment trying to run a business. Now, of course, there's plenty of homeowners that have an electric mower and they mow their yard, or electric weed whacker. People are familiar with that. It's showing up everywhere, and that's kind of how things are shifting anyway. But running a full, lawn care business while you're mowing, 10, 20 yards a day or more if you have a full crew is totally different. And so far, as best as I can tell, I'm the first one to do it in at least this level and in this fashion. I've not seen anyone else towing with, an electric vehicle or, at the very least a Tesla Model Y, and I haven't seen anyone doing onboard, take with you solar power generation lawn care. I think I'm on the forefront here.
At the very least, if there are people out there, you're not following a blueprint. Like
when I was researching this kind of thing, trying to see what other people were doing, there's a couple videos out there of people, mowing lawns with electric equipment, talking about a little bit how they use it in their business, but there was nothing at this level that I saw, and even still, I don't see anything out there at the moment at this level.
So the overall plans for Solarpunk lawn care, it's not just to mow lawns for you, right? Like it's much more about the message of it and making videos on it and sort of growing this idea. Can you talk about sort of the overarching idea of this thing? Because it's not just lawn care, right? Like you're not done. I mean, you set up the trailer, you got everything working, like it works great, but it's just starting with that, right?
Right. Back to the feeling of, being on board the yachts and wanting to do something impactful. What I thought about was I knew my local area at home where mom and dad are. And I knew that our local waterways are suffering from immense nutrient pollution, which a big part of that is actually lawn care, both fertilization and just, grass clippings getting washed down storm drains and, out into the waterways. The problem with that is it's too much nutrients into the local area. And so algae blooms are just going off like crazy. These algae blooms are feeding on all this excess nutrients, and they are essentially cutting off the oxygen for the water, and the fish and everything out there can't actually breathe oxygen. So you'll have huge fish kills. Also, on top of that, you have seagrasses dying, so manatees are running out of food to eat, so you're having huge amounts of manatees dying. And now lawn care is not the only thing that's causing this. There's other pollution, there's sewage leakage, things like that. But this was a big deal for our area. And I thought about, what can I do for this? And there's one way, which is, you try and get involved in your local government and try and help, push policies, or you can go door to door and tell people, hey, you shouldn't fertilize, too much or in these months, or hey, you should, replace your grass with something you don't have to cut, near the road so that this stuff doesn't wash down the storm drain. And thinking about it that way, people don't respond well to that. You come at them, you knock on their door and you say, hey, you shouldn't do this, or you should change the way you're doing things. They don't want to listen to it. They, whether you're right or they believe you, they don't make changes in that fashion. So looking at it from that perspective, if I become the lawn care service for these people, you have to build trust with them right off the bat. I mean, you're on their property, you're going in their backyards, you know their daily lives. There's so much trust you have to build up between this person. And once you build up that trust, then you can say, hey, how about we replace the grass in this section of your property with a native lawn alternative and see how it goes. So far, I haven't gotten too many large projects done, but every time I've approached one of my clients and said, hey, you're looking to do a planter bed setup here in your front yard, how about we try native stuff? And they're like, yeah, sure, that sounds great. You have this level of trust with them, and it's much, much easier to make these kinds of changes, try things out, and basically you've got the in with these people. And then you expand upon that, and you try larger and larger projects. And the point of the YouTube channel is to try and share this as you go so that I can encourage and inspire other people to do the same. That way it's not just me making one change here, one property here. It's showing an entire online community that this is what you can do and this is how to do it better, and try and make a larger impact as quickly as possible.
Just to back up for just a second here.
Sure.
It almost sounds a little bit wishy-washy to say, oh, we got to do our part and protect, our local waterways. But describe where you're at, because, I mean, I obviously know, we grew up there too, but
right,
you're on the Space Coast in Central Florida. That's actually, well, you can probably describe it better than I can, but it's actually the only place in the world that has that specific ecosystem. We live in the
it's an incredible ecosystem. So it's specifically called the Indian River Lagoon, and you'll hear it referred to as the Indian River. It's hardly a river. It doesn't flow. There's no tides. It's basically closed off from the ocean as best as you can say around this area, and it's an incredible ecosystem. It's an estuary, and it used to be the redfish capital of the world.
Yeah.
So you would have people come from all over the world to come redfish here. And I don't know for sure, but I don't think that's the case anymore, because we've had so many fish kills. We've had so many issues with essentially the river just dying. I remember growing up as a kid, it was much more clear, and there's tons of wildlife and fish everywhere. If you go out there, now or in the last couple of years, the water is like brown. It is gross looking. You don't want to get in it because it just looks disgusting. And that's all caused by our local issues.
Yeah.
Ignoring anything you might hear or think about climate change, that kind of stuff. This is a local problem that we're dealing with, and it's mainly caused by overpollution of it's mainly caused by nutrient pollution. Too much nutrients going into the system. So it's an incredible place too with bioluminescence. It's one of the only places around that you go out there in certain times of the month and you put your hand in the water and it glows around you. Like, it is just an unbelievable phenomenon, and it's so cool to see. And so this ecosystem is just crazy, and watching it, suffer and and have so many problems, and knowing what the problems are and seeing people just constantly make the same choices is really tough to watch.
Okay, so moving back into your your pursuit here, and part of like what is your personal way of trying to address some of this. You have this lawn care service, which is actually amazing when you think about it, because it's kind of directly trying to address where the source of this problem is coming from. And again, it's hard to kind of describe the uniqueness of the ecosystem around there. It's really something pretty. There's the Indian River, which is brackish water, which is this very unique
Salt
mix
slash fresh.
Yeah. So you get this really just it's genuinely a one of a kind on Earth ecosystem around there. Okay, so you've got the lawn care service. You called it Solarpunk Lawn Care.
Yes.
Just explain the word Solarpunk. I don't think it's getting there, but it's not quite a household
Right.
noun.
Right. Most people, especially that I've run into, have never heard the term solar punk.
Yeah.
Most people though have heard of the word cyberpunk, or steampunk. There's kind of this aesthetic that you get when you say those words. So cyberpunk is this like dystopian future with neon lights, and the world's just kind of gone into this half like, robot or augmented people, and, just this dirty, gringy place with corporations run everything. And it's just this like, kind of this surreal future. Yeah. Steampunk is kind of this like, vision of the future, but from the Victorian era, where you have these big steam ships and everything's powered by steam, and everything has gears, and it's all bronze and gold looking, and you got the cool glasses and things like that. Well, Solarpunk is this optimistic view of the future, where we've figured out how to solve a lot of our issues and problems in the world, and we're incorporating both technology and nature together. And people have community gardens, and it's just this sort of this rosy outlook on the future. And so does that explain it well enough? Do you have anything to add there? Because you might be able to expound on that.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of Solarpunk just as an ideal. I think the important thread there is that you're talking about your time on these super yachts and making good money. You're literally off for 6 months a year, which just, of course you worked very hard when you weren't off, but still, it's
right,
like, man, 6 months vacation is pretty incredible. You're going to all these amazing places, but and I don't want to speak for you here, but it sounds like the thing that was wrong had in large part to do with this personal vision for where you're headed with your life and what you want the future to be. And it sounds like you're kind of working towards or being a part of the wrong thing. You're not, it makes me think of the smokers from Waterworld. Like, you're on that team,
Yes. Yes.
And the idea, cyberpunk, we all get cyberpunk. We've seen Blade Runner. It's this very compelling aesthetic for the future of, high technology, low society. It's grungy, and there's this huge mismatch between the haves and the have-nots, but there's this certain look to it. But that's been sci-fi's vision of the future for a long time. Like, cyberpunk is just this big vision, like way of telling the future, or kind of reflection.
I feel it's fairly well defined, or at least there's a lot of content out there that aligns with cyberpunk. There's even an entire video game kind of in that universe, and it's easy for people to kind of understand it. And it's sort of how all the sci-fi movies and shows kind of tend towards, is this cyberpunk future. Solarpunk is a little unique in that it's trying to be, optimistic and not dystopian, and you're rejecting capitalism, and it's just this like beautiful green outlook on the future.
Yeah, the way I describe it is, imagine if technology actually worked for people, which at
I
first
think I know what you
glance,
mean. Yeah.
yeah, if you think about it, you'd think, what are you talking about? Of course it does. But Daniel and I we've spent entirely too much time reflecting on and complaining about how it feels like all the technology we have is working against us.
Mm-hmm.
Not 100%, but in so many ways we are so distracted, so your attention gets fried. It feels like the more you use the technology that we have, the worse off you are in many ways. uh,
Mm-hmm.
of course not across the board, but it's, everyone knows that all this stuff that's on your phone, all these services that you use, they're trying to take something from you. We know that.
Mm-hmm.
No rational person would argue otherwise. And to me, Solarpunk is this idea of, hey, imagine if that weren't the case. Imagine if
Right.
technology kept advancing and kept getting better, but it respected you. It worked for you, and it tried to make you a better, healthier, happier person. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
in some sense, that ideal is what I want in some of my pursuits. I mean, it's not
Right.
quite as, aligned literally or aesthetically, but that is what I want, is to work on and put my time into developing technologies that make a person better. I think
Right.
that's probably the
Right.
simplest way you could put it. Anyway, not to get off on like a
Yeah.
solar punk tangent
So
here.
back to the lawn care company, when when thinking in terms of solar punk, this future,
Yeah.
lawn care is the exact opposite of that. So lawns are not beneficial. They, you know, for my area, they're not native. They're these, giant greenscapes. They're usually all one identical species. People fertilize them, they water them, and it's just this desert for nature. Almost nothing lives there
Yeah.
besides just the grass. So it felt a little weird trying to start a lawn care company and call it Solarpunk. There's already been a couple of cases where, someone's commented on my Instagram post and say like, "Oh, lawn care and Solarpunk, completely opposite, like, it doesn't even make sense. We shouldn't have lawns." And they're right, we shouldn't have lawns, but you know, back to the trying to change people's behaviors and change their minds. How do you do that? Do you just walk up to their door and say like, "Hey, you should replace all your lawn"? It doesn't work.
Yeah.
So this was my attempt at trying to get build that trust with them, and you know help encourage them in the right direction, share that journey as I go, and hopefully inspire others to do that. Show that things can be done a little differently. I mean, if we did nothing else completely, if we replaced all the lawn care equipment out there with electric stuff, we'd be way better off. The amount of emissions you get from lawn care is insane. I mean, cars have emissions regulations. Even though they're burning gasoline, lawn care does not. It has nothing. So the emissions you get from a little lawnmower mowing somebody's lawn can be like 100 times worse than driving a car, like, down the highway for 50, 60 miles or so. And the other thing is, just on a personal aspect, like for operators of lawn care equipment, what you're breathing in is horrible.
Yeah.
You're shortening your lifespan by breathing this stuff in as you're operating the equipment, and dealing with the fumes and the exhaust gases and everything. So even if we just replaced the equipment with electric, we'd be way
Hmm.
better off. So
Well,
those are some of the things I thought about when starting this out. But it is weird trying to, I literally named my company Solarpunk Lawn Care, and they're complete opposites. Solarpunk and lawn care are total opposites. So it feels a little weird going down this path. But I want to get to the point where, I'm more of Solarpunk landscape and less lawn care. But
Yeah.
yeah.
So I'm wondering if we can zoom out a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So, these are sort of your ideals, like your big vision ideas. I'm wondering about the personal journey of you, because you have done many projects in the past. All three of us have done many projects in the past that we have started and then we fall off of it and we fail at it, whatever. What is different about this one? This one seems like you are actually, well, it doesn't seem like it. You are actually doing this. And this has lasted, I think, longer than almost anything else that or whatever. Yeah. This one seems to be on the track to success, and that's really exciting. What is different about this project than, say, past projects? Like, what is it that's making this work?
That's a tough one to answer. One thing, though, was getting ready to leave yachting. The idea was I need to find a way to not have to go back. I've had many friends that have tried to leave yachting, and it's an incredibly difficult change lifestyle-wise. You're used to being able to. I know plenty of friends that have blown $5,000 in a weekend just on partying.
Wow.
A couple times as a crew, we would rent an entire villa after we finish a charter season, which is just when people rent the boat to use it in a particular area. So we would rent out an entire villa as the crew and go and just enjoy ourselves for the weekend. And you have that capability. I mean, you're making money and you don't have any expenses. So it's disposable income if you choose it to be.
Sorry, I'm going to demonstrate how removed I am from this world and ask you, what is a villa?
A villa?
Yeah.
The particular one I'm thinking of is a very large house with an infinity pool, multiple rooms for all sorts of guests and everything, garage for cars and things like that. We didn't have any cars, but it overlooks the ocean. It's too pedestrian to call it a house or a vacation home. It's your villa. It's luxury.
Fancy-ass house.
Everything's painted white. It's open spaces. It's unbelievably gorgeous. And, we rented it out for a few days, and we had, crew members staying in this part and that part and whatever. And we just enjoyed ourselves and, drank and partied and relaxed after an incredibly busy, season where we're just working our asses off every day for 6 months straight. So it's that like, let go, splurge. You haven't even had the opportunity to spend any money for the last 6 months because you've just been working, eating, and sleeping. That's it. Barely sleeping. So you get to that point and you're like, we're going to go in on a villa and, split it 5-6 ways and it costs a couple $1,000 for the weekend. Yeah, no problem. Like it doesn't even faze you at that point.
Yeah.
So that's a villa.
Cool. I was trying to think, like, if you gave me $5,000 and said you have to spend this on the end of the weekend on non-tangible objects, I don't think I could. I'm just
food and alcohol.
But even that
and luxury.
how many Rainiers is $5,000?
You get used to that because you're surrounded by people, whether it's charter guests who are renting the boat or the owners themselves. You see that lifestyle. For them, I knew one owner got mad at his iPad, threw it in the water. Buy another one. What is it? $1,200, $1,500? Doesn't care. That money is absolutely nothing to them. So you watch this kind of lifestyle and you get used to it. And when you don't have, financial expenses or responsibilities as a crew member, it's easy to spend a bit of your salary on, doing fun things. And you're in amazing locations. I mean, unbelievable locations. So the boat, comes to the dock in St. Lucia in, the Caribbean, or St. Bart's, where, some people have heard of that area with like the billionaires and the celebrities and all that kind of thing. You're in just gorgeous places, and you're living on the boat, and you're, essentially living for free. So spending money here or there to go experience these luxuries is easy. And it's so hard to leave that lifestyle. And, I've had so many friends that have tried, and, they come right back into yachting because they run out of money. They don't realize that, it's incredibly expensive to go live in the real world and, start something on your own type of thing.
So how did you succeed at staying out?
It's weird to think of it as success, because I don't know how things are going to end up in the long run. But the path I wanted was get out of yachting as quickly as possible. So, moving back in with mom and dad at home is a way to keep my expenses low. Starting a business is capital intensive, so I needed money for that. But starting a lawn care business is a little bit easier because, you can go and you can get one client, and you can start mowing that one client's property and make a little bit of money mowing that property. And then you get a second client, and you slowly build, and you're not buying a storefront, or you're not launching some huge, operation. Almost anyone can get a mower and go and, mow a neighbor's property and make a couple bucks. So that was like a very low bar to getting started. And then, I've been surviving on savings for, the first couple months of getting this thing up and running. I invested a lot of my own money in the equipment, and, I just keep working until the point where the operations of the lawn care company is paying for my expenses. So it's paying my car payment, it's paying for food, it's paying for everything I need to survive. So I'm not making crazy money. I'm definitely not making the money that I was on a yacht, but I'm making enough to survive and to keep going and to keep investing in what I'm trying to do.
I don't know if you want to get into this side of it, but I know we had many long conversations about some of the other ideas and projects that you had in the past years. And I know that they aren't, you've sort of decided to push them off, and maybe that's something you could talk about too. But
Sure, yeah.
One of the biggest problems, it seemed like, was the activation energy required for some of these projects was so high. Like trying to achieve what was needed to get to the point where you're making money, sustaining things, was just this pretty Herculean, or this big gap, right? Where this time around, it seems like you kind of thought about it a little differently and thought more like, hey, rather than think about the biggest impact I can have, the most world-changing idea, let's think about what can I do right now that has a very realistic and straightforward on-ramp into, okay, now I'm covering costs and I can start to grow from here. And like that isn't, that's not a 5-year or 10-year process. That's like months of getting there. I mean, would you say that's kind of part of what makes this different right now?
In a way, yes. The other side of it is, it's very easy for me to dream and to, see the kind of I won't say, see the future, but see a future that I want to get to, or see like how big something could be. And, it's hard to kind of pull back from that. So, I started out with this lawn care thing, and before I even started, I was looking at all sorts of things, how I could make organic fertilizer, and how I could like start this huge operation of, swapping out from, people fertilizing their lawn with synthetic stuff to me, like having these huge containers at home, and I'm basically brewing this stuff myself, and just on and on and on. Like the vision for me was huge. And the problem with that is I needed to basically just cover living expenses, and getting getting into it, I had to kind of set a lot of that stuff aside of, okay, that's something I will work on later. Right
Mm-hmm.
now, it's just simply I need equipment, I need clients, and I need money because I'm running out of it. So a lot of the motivator, for what I'm doing right now was basically just trying to get enough clients to stop running out of savings. And it's only until recently that I've sort of reached that I'm like, okay, you know what? Now I can start working on this bigger picture stuff that I want to get into. The projects you were mentioning before, uh, one of the main ones that I wanted to do was actually build a hydrofoil. I think that's maybe the one you're specifically referring to.
Yeah.
Um,
And maybe explain what a hydrofoil is real quick.
yeah, sure, of course. A hydrofoil is a boat that uses wings under the surface of the water. Those wings generate lift and push the boat up out of the water, to the point where the hull of the boat, the majority of it, is up out of the water, and you're just like flying on the wings underneath the water. This is this helps you reduce the amount of energy required to move the boat. So, you think of a big boat in the water or any boat in the water, it has to push all this water out of the way, and that water is thick and heavy. And so, if you can get it up out of the water, you reduce all that energy required, all that drag on the boat. And so, it's much more efficient. And when you're up out of the water, if there's any waves below you, it's a much, much smoother ride because you're just kind of gliding over top of them. So that's a hydrofoil, and I've wanted to build one for forever now. And I worked a lot on that project. You know, Michael, you helped me on that as well a long time ago when I was trying to design this thing and figure out how to do it. And, Dad helped me a lot, and we both kind of worked on the project for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And that was something that I was wanting to do and so focused on, but the path to actually getting it out there would require a crazy amount of money and a huge amount of work that it felt just utterly daunting. And I felt like even with working on a yacht and getting 6 months off a year, I didn't have the money or the time to fully commit to it and to see it to fruition. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking I would probably need, a couple $1 million to get this thing, the business started to where you can sell a fully electric, that was the other thing. It was fully electric that I wanted to do, hydrofoil boat. And seemed like just an insurmountable task to do, and I ended up putting it on hold. And of course, starting what I'm doing now with Solarpunk and Delta V. However, with the Solarpunk, I actually see the path to get back to that. And I don't know if we want to talk about that now, but um, that's something right now that I feel optimistic about, is actually being able to get back to this project. And the reason that I feel that way is because with sharing what I'm doing, I can hopefully gain a following and um, build a revenue stream around my online presence. So YouTube videos, Patreon, and the community that comes along with that over time. If I can get to the point where I'm able to spend time working on this hydrofoil project and making videos on it, and people are interested in that and following along with that and contributing to that,
Mm-hmm.
then I might be able to actually complete this project and get a real, working prototype out there, and launch this thing from there. There's a lot of benefits to having this online following and support along, a project.
Yeah, it almost sounds like the electric hydrofoiler is kind of like the big dream. And to be clear, if again we've talked about this quite a bit, so I know a little bit of the backstory here, but the the idea is that if you could build this vehicle, it, I mean, it has a major impact on like the global pollution and usage of, I mean, this goes right back to the super yacht stuff, right? Like you're witnessing, not
Mm-hmm.
that you necessarily have a hydrofoiling super yacht, but you're in this industry looking at yachting and just boats and the amount of polluting that they do. And so this
Right.
is almost a direct solution to at least a major part of that, of, hey, now we have this electric vehicle that's very efficient and almost futuristic in that it's smooth, it's
Mm-hmm.
quiet, it doesn't really behave like a normal boat does, sort of banging into waves and whatnot.
Right.
So that's almost, to me, it's like the big dream is this, that genuinely
Right.
would have an impact on the planet, not just local ecosystem,
Yes.
but the planet. Uh, but then looking at your trajectory, it feels like trying to just go right after that just wasn't really realistic, in terms of what it would really take.
Yeah,
Is that a
the
fair characterization?
sure. The more and more I got into it, the more I realized that I essentially needed or would have benefited a lot from a team of engineers or a
Mm-hmm.
team of people that are really passionate about trying to create this thing. And I'm not the first person to have this idea, and there are others out there that are working on it right now. So it
Yeah.
is progressing without my input at all, even so. But the money that it would cost to try and do this thing, the resources, time wise, engineering wise, to do this is just immense. And it was really hard to see that path to actually, you know, being able to make money early enough to support me to continue, this passion project. And it was, when working on it, it was hard to see, okay, how could I, sell a small version of this in order to make money to fuel the next thing. It
Right.
it wasn't as clear figuring out how to do that. Whereas, the lawn care thing, even if I don't have a crazy vision, I can take on another lawn and make, money on that lawn and support stuff. And if, I still have some time, I can roll that investment into the next slightly larger thing, and then again the next slightly larger thing, and on and so forth. And so I can grow it from, one lawn into just a much larger project of being able to do what I want to and invest in the next thing, and on and on.
I like this
So
idea of sort of investing in one thing and then using that to kind of bring you into the next and trying to sort of grow that way.
back to the Solarpunk lawn care stuff. It was my idea from the beginning to be producing videos and showing the journey, and how I installed the solar panels on the trailer and all these things. So I recorded everything. But the necessities of life was, I need food. I can't afford, to eat. Um, I have a car and I'm trying to pay off. And, how do I, from where I am now, get to that point where, like, I'm not burning cash? Because I was just pulling from savings, burning cash, burning cash, burning cash. So the immediate problems were fix my cash flow. And so videos kind of fell in the background of, like, I don't have time. If I work a whole bunch on a video, it doesn't gain me anything monetarily right now. So it was, no, I need more clients. I need, more money coming in. So I was taking on, weeding jobs and mulching jobs and all sorts of things to try and pay for expenses and investments. I bought all these solar panels and batteries and everything to install. And it was like, all
Yeah.
right, now I got to figure out how to pay for these. So, I'm taking on every job that I possibly can, just things that you probably shouldn't take on, and, just solving the immediate problems. And then now that things are like, okay, I have enough to cover my living costs and a little bit extra, now it's time to invest in the next thing. And that's, time in videos and, effort on that front to hopefully build and grow that. So it's constantly trying to, put out the fires around you and getting to the next thing.
Yeah, I feel like with Solarpunk, you have to pay attention to the practical side. Like the exact situation you're in is you have to make money, so you have to mow lawns, and it keeps you like every single week, multiple times a week, probably,
Yes,
right?
every week. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, multiple
you
times a week. Yep.
you have to keep doing it over and over and over again, and then you can build on top of that. For something like the hydrofoil, it's a dream, and so you work on it when you can, and then you have to go back to work, and you can't touch it for 6 months or whatever,
Yeah.
and so it's just this.
Yeah, just to explain that, I didn't take 6 months off and then works for 6 months. It was a rotation schedule. So I would work 2 months on and have 2 months off, or 3 months on and have 3 months off, and it just rotated like that. Yeah. So you went from this hardcore on the boat working nonstop for 2 months or 3 months or whatever, and you have crappy internet, so you can't even watch videos, you can't do anything. And you have a roommate, you're living with other people, you're just so busy, you don't have time for real world stuff. And then you go from that directly into completely open schedule, no routine, no nothing. And that was a big struggle for me because, you take like 2 weeks to just decompress from all the stuff that you've been dealing with and all the work that you've been doing. And it was so hard to kind of get into what you really want to do, and you're always feeling guilty for not working on it, nonstop from the day you get off the boat till the day you go back. And, so that was a struggle on its own, but it was just these two polar opposites of, you have this set amount of time at home and you got to get everything done in that time that you want to, including, just normal life things like going to doctors and dentists and, renewing the registration on your car or getting your license redone or whatever it is. You have to do all these things in this time frame, and it was really hard to not only like start working on the project you want to, but also to be in that routine of constantly working on it. And then of course, the moment you get into everything and you're making good progress and you're feeling great, you got to go right back to work, and then you can't touch it again. So yeah,
See,
that was really tough.
That's why I think this is working so well, is that you have both sides of that into one thing, where this practicality is keeping your dreams in line too. Like they're both tied together in the same thing. So I mean, it's probably not that simple, but
it's not that simple, no. And the way I describe things and what we're talking about, it's easy to look at it from the outside and say, oh yeah, it's totally working, and you're succeeding, and you're getting all these things done, but it doesn't come without incredible struggles and all sorts of problems and those things.
All right. So I feel like there was this big change from before you uploaded the video for both Solarpunk and Delta V, which we should talk about before we end the episode. But there's this big change from just sort of these vague ideas of making a video, or you were recording a bunch of stuff, but you had not actually uploaded anything. And from what it seemed like to me, is that you were very frustrated, or seemingly frustrated beforehand, and then you upload the video on both channels, and it feels official now. I mean, that's how it looks like for me, is okay, now you're in it, now it's official, now you can kind of start going with it, and you've seen your videos start getting some views, and you're getting some interaction there. I want to know how you felt before the videos and after the videos. Was there a big change, or is that just in my head?
There's definitely a change. It's hard to say it's night and day, but a lot of it is trying to figure out the editing software. So I've made videos in the past, and I've used a couple different softwares for that. And so at this point, like, I used to have Adobe Premiere, but I got sick of paying for the subscription, so I canceled that. I bought this other software. And, I've wanted to do these videos. I've recorded tons and tons of stuff. I mean, I've got, a couple terabytes worth of just videos over the last, at least, 2 years or so. even longer considering the hydrofoil stuff. And I've never uploaded anything yet on those projects. So, more recently it was like, okay, I've got this, I've got this new software. I have to learn it. And, there's lots of problems that come with that. You start trying to figure it out, and, you're fighting with it to do the simplest things possible. How do I cut this clip, and, how do I import these videos, and what frame rate, and all this stuff. So it's just this like muddy process of trying to figure it out. And I remember you guys were saying, oh, hey, we're trying to upload a video on July 3rd or something like that. You both wanted to upload a video by that time.
We went through this experience of trying to upload this personal video
Right.
that we share with people.
Yeah. Daniel reached out to me and he said, hey, do you want to be part of this pact? And I was sort of thinking, yeah, I do, but there was just so much to do. And I'm glad I didn't, just for the fact that there was way too much work to actually do. But once I started getting into it, once I got the videos into the program and I started making my cuts and I started getting into this thing, I got into the rhythm and I felt like, okay, I've actually got enough footage. I've got enough material here. I can make this work. And this was for the Delta V video, the bus video. And, I just, at that point, something kind of clicked and I just started working on it constantly. I mean, towards the end there, I spent, 3 or 4 days just at my computer nonstop. I would mow on this day, and then the next day I'm just like at the computer just working on this thing. I spent, probably 14 hours one day just messing with audio trying to get this thing right. And it was just this thought that, hey, I'm almost there. I can almost, finish and upload this video. So I'm going to push as hard as I can until I get it out there, because you see the finish line and you just want to do it. So I managed to do it. I got it out there. Thanks again, Dan, for the help with the thumbnail. And, I posted the video and it was like, okay, next one, let's go. Yep. Like, I want to get this video of, the lawn care stuff. It's like, I've learned enough with editing. I'm a little quicker. I don't want to do any voiceover, so I'm just going to do everything in front of the camera. At that same time, I finally decided on what I wanted to call the YouTube channel for the lawn care stuff. And that actually helped a lot. I decided to call it Solarpunk Steve. And weirdly, I've never ever gone by the name Steve. I've always gone by Steven. And going by, Solarpunk Steve helped me kind of separate of, okay, this person that's online on YouTube and wherever is not me. And I can, Solarpunk Steve can talk in front of a camera and be weird and, walk around and people are looking at me and whatever. Steven, the one that I've known for my entire life, doesn't do that kind of thing. So separating those two is actually really, really helpful. And so I was able to, go out and film this whole video of me just kind of showing and demonstrating my equipment and what it's like, trying to mow a bunch of yards and using solar power. And it kind of turned into this like fun, enjoyable video to watch. And I'm, trying to crack bad jokes and things like that. But yeah, same thing happened. I started editing the video and I just pushed so hard until I was done with it and got it out there. And almost immediately I'm like, all right, what's the next thing I can do? It's not like, oh, how's this video doing? And there's a little bit of that here and there, of course.
Right. Yeah.
With Delta V, it was more, how's it doing? Are people subscribing? Are people liking? That kind of thing. But by the time I released the Solarpunk video, after that one, I don't even care the videos, the views I'm getting on it. I'm ready to release the next one and pushing for the next thing and, going from there.
It's cool. Some of the things you're talking about are things that we've sort of covered and stumbled upon a little bit in the past. But your alter ego, Solarpunk Steve, is 100% the Batman effect.
Yes.
We talked about that at length. This is a studied phenomenon that when you role play as some other persona, especially this kind of superhero type,
Mm-hmm.
it puts your mind in a completely different place, and it gets you out of that sort of self-analysis, self-conscious,
Right.
self-absorbed
I
type of
mean,
thinking.
it's hard enough to sit in your own room or the comfort of your home and talk in
Mm,
front of a camera, but you know, now I feel comfortable going out. I'm in someone's backyard. They're home. I know they're home. They're probably watching me through the window. And I'm
Yep.
sitting there talking in front of a camera,
yeah.
driving a mower and doing these things, or walking down the road, with a camera in front of my face and talking out loud. And it's weird. It's very weird. But
Yeah.
part of it
Yeah.
is you just get used to it, and then the other part of it is, here I am. This is Solarpunk Steve. He's making a video to put on his YouTube channel,
Yeah.
and it's weird. It really is weird how you can do that. And I've rolled that into responding to comments on YouTube. It's you take on this personality of this person, you know responding to people, being excited about things and that kind of stuff. And then I've even rolled that into the actual business side of stuff, where a client might call me, or a potential client might call me, and I hate answering the phone. I don't want to actually talk to this
Yeah.
person. But
Yeah.
Solarpunk Steve can respond to them, and he can do these things, and he can
Yeah.
close the call and make this happen. It's a weird thing.
It's a real thing, but I've been needing to figure out sort of the way I name things online and deal with like website and what I'm actually calling everything, all that stuff, like the labeling. I need to take a second look, and it's cool that you say that, because I was sort of leaning towards, not just calling it Daniel New or whatever. I need to think about that thing. So it's nice to hear that it's working well for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong though, like I still have plenty of, shots where I'm trying to record myself and I don't say it right, or I don't like the way it's, presented, or the
Yeah.
pace of it. And, I've got thousands of cuts of me saying the wrong thing or saying it slightly wrong. And,
Yeah.
you keep going, you try again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, should we cover Delta V real quick before we wrap things up?
Sure. Yeah.
So
So
tell us about Delta V.
Delta V is the coffee shop that I want to build. And, this goes back to way back in the day, with you, Michael. We talked about, I think it was back when you were living in Titusville here, and you were, in the apartment downtown, and we would brew coffee with your little vacuum coffee brewer. And we would make it, on your countertop, and it would boil up into the top and then like suck back down. And it was this cool little like vacuum coffee brewed thing. And we talked about like, oh, you could have an entire coffee shop like this with, vacuum tubes all over the place. And we discussed, at length the coffee shop design and all that stuff. So, pretty much from that point, I've always had this like coffee shop idea in the back of my head. And it wasn't until maybe 6 or 7 years ago where I thought about a more solid idea for a coffee shop, and kind of inspired and based around rocket science and some sci-fi touches and stuff in there. And the reason I called it Delta V is there's this really cool map of it looks like a subway map of our solar system, and it shows all the planets in our solar system, and Earth kind of at the bottom, and it shows the delta V, or the change in your velocity that is required to get to these different planets in the solar system. So it might take 2,500 meters per second to get to a different orbit, and then a whole bunch more meters per second velocity change to get to the next planet, and those sorts of things. So it's this cool like simplistic visual representation of essentially what rockets are doing. They are pushing a payload, whether it's a satellite or humans, up to a certain speed to get to a different planet or a different orbit. And so I love this concept of delta V, of the change in velocity required to get around our solar system. And coffee is kind of what we do to change our own velocity. You know, you're tired, you drink a cup of coffee, and then you know, hop in the car and go to work and go about your day. You're constantly using caffeine to sort of accelerate yourself into, you know, what you need to get done and wake yourself up and, you know, instill energy. So that's kind of how this like rocket science delta V nerdiness came into, okay, this applies to coffee. And, you know, it changed a lot, whether it was like, oh, I want a, you know, a brick and mortar physical location and I want to have this, you know, delta V map in there, and I want it in somewhere around here on the space coast of Florida, so that you've got, you know, tons of people that work out at NASA and SpaceX and Blue Origin, all the other companies out there now. You know, a place for them to kind of come and hang out, and, you know, that sort of thing. I've also gone back and forth with mobile. You know, I was like, hey, you know, I'm towing a trailer for lawn care. Should I tow a trailer for coffee? Like, should I just build this thing? And then, long story I won't get into, I had also bought a school bus a long time ago. And so I thought about, you know, well, what if I built the coffee shop inside the school bus? I've since sold that to somebody. But, you know, the bus has been around. I've had that thought and that feeling inside of it, trying to envision what a coffee shop would look like inside of a bus. And it was the silliest thing. You know, I've had this Delta V coffee idea and the name of it. So I've wanted to purchase the domain name deltavcoffee.com. And it was actually being used by a different company. You know, these people out in Houston, Texas own deltavcoffee.com, and they were running a small like brewing, you know, roasting coffee shop out there. Well, I'm sitting in physics class and I'm bored out of my mind because my professor. So I'm poking around on my phone, and I just happened to look to see if deltavcoffee.com was for sale, the domain name. And sure enough, it was. And I was like, oh my God. So I buy it. And this is dumb. I mean, it's $12 a year to buy a domain name on Google. So like I bought it for $12. All of a sudden, everything just kind of hit me, and I was, you know what? I need to start this. Like, this is a sign. I've got this domain name. Like, now's the time. And so I start looking, and I'm like, buying a physical location is just way out of my budget right now. You know, all sorts of reasons why that would be a bad idea. So I'm back to, okay, you know, what if I'm, you know, towing a trailer, and oh, what if I buy another school bus and convert that into a coffee shop? So I start looking, and, you know, I kind of naturally fall down this like mobile side of things because I can change location. I don't have to go out every day, you know, and run a physical location, that kind of thing. So I start down the bus route. Like, if I'm going to do it, like, it's got to be big. I can't just do it out of a little tiny trailer. Yeah. That's just not the way I roll. So I start, you know, poking around on eBay, Craigslist, that sort of thing. I see this crazy cool old bus on eBay in like Illinois or something. And I'm thinking, this would be perfect. So I get obsessed with thinking about this one. And, you know, finally I kind of, you know, I'm talking back and forth with the guy. And finally I said, you know what, it's way too much work to go over there. But a random one comes up online over in Tampa, Florida. So it's like 2.5 hours, 3 hours away. And it's this crazy weird looking fishbowl bus from Speed. And, you know, it's not crazy expensive. It looks in good condition, but the pictures are crappy. So I messaged our uncle, who's, you know, an awesome diesel mechanic. And I said, you want to come with me? And he was just like, yeah, totally. So we drove over there, checked it out. And, you know, all it took was basically just walking inside of the bus. And I said, yeah, I'm going to buy this thing. Like, this is the one to make the coffee shop out of.
Yeah.
So
it sparked joy.
Yeah. It sparked joy. So I made it happen. You know, I made a whole video of it. It's up on Delta V Coffee on YouTube. But managed to, you know, get it home with difficulty, but get it home. You know, drove it over the road.
It's so cool for me to just see you have these ideas, talk about them, whatever, and then just see them actually happening. See the bus show up at mom and dad's house. see the Solarpunk video go up. Like, just to see this stuff start happening for really all of us is really exciting to me. So I look forward to your future videos, and I'm subscribed to your Patreon. So
thank you. That's all.
Look forward to more
I have
content.
two. One for one for Delta V, one for Solarpunk.
Well, does anybody have any closing
ahead.
thoughts?
I just kind of reflecting on what you're saying and listening through the narrative of like where you started and where you're at. I wanted to just try and draw down a couple themes out of it, because that's kind of been our thing, is trying to sort of give names to things that we discover and what works. And one of the big things here was going from dreaming about stuff a lot, talking about stuff a lot, having big ideas, into actually doing those things. And I very clearly remember this conversation that we had late at night down in, the family room at mom and dad's house. I remember you specifically saying, like, towards the end of this, hey, actually do it though. These things that you keep talking about, do them, because so far they haven't been done. And obviously there's a million miles still to go for all of us, but to see it progress as well as it has is pretty awesome.
Yeah. The reason I said that is because, the three of us have always been able to talk about things that we want to do, or that, we could see being done. And, I was 100% guilty of this. It's so much easier to talk about it than to actually do it. And I was so sick of talking about it. Combined with the fact that I was just miserable on board, it was like, either I go do this, or, I suck it up, I make good money, I buy a house, and, it's easier. It's so much easier to just stick with what you're doing, or, stick in your job or whatever. It's so much harder to actually do it, but I'm so glad that I left that world. And, I'm glad both of you are working on, your projects that you care about. And that was the whole point. That was the whole point of our conversation at that table, was like, let's stop talking about it and go do it.
And that, to me, seems like one of the big themes or things that you've sort of walked through here a little bit is, ultimately, if you're going to do anything, you have to somehow connect this future solar punk idea, this thing in your head of, it's a fantasy, a vision. You somehow have to connect that into what you actually do when you wake up every single day.
Yeah.
And in some sense, it's what you've described is this process of making or building this bridge into, I have a real plan that I'm really doing every single day. And yeah, it's super hard, and we don't even have time to talk about some of the struggles. You've had physical pain and all kinds of things that have made this really difficult.
Heat exhaustion.
Yeah, you're in. It's hard to describe how miserable Florida can be.
Sick for a weekend. Like,
really? Wow.
It's really bad. Yeah. So there's so much. That was one of the closing comments I wanted to make, is just, it's easy to look from the outside, see, success, or these cool things people are doing, or whatever, and just say, oh man, that looks amazing. And same thing with the yachting. It's people, you guys included, would look at, my Instagram, where you see these absolutely gorgeous pictures, you see this lifestyle from the outside, and you don't understand, you don't know, you haven't been there for the struggle, or how bad things are on the inside of that type of, whatever it is. In my case, it was yachting, but same goes for, the Solarpunk stuff, the Delta V stuff. You see someone on YouTube having a good time doing these cool things, and you don't know the backstory, and you don't know the struggles they're going through day to day. You don't have this, like, the context for everything. And so I just want to caution people with, what I'm saying here of all these things I'm, seemingly doing and succeeding at now. It's that it's not been and isn't continuing to be without incredible struggle, physical health problems, all sorts of things that go along with it.
Well, and the other theme was pretend to be Batman.
Yeah, it helps a lot. It really does. If you find an alter ego, just run with it. It's been fun for me so far. I've spent the last 3 or 4 days as Solarpunk Steve trying to film and get ready for the next video.
It's science. We talked about it. There's papers on it. You can measure it. It's pretty cool.
All right. Well, Stephen, thank you so much for coming on and being our very first guest. It's been on our list of things to do.
Okay.
Yeah, very first. It's been on our list of things to do literally since the very start. So we can finally check that box. Thank you.
Happy to be here. It was fun. And, I hope your audience gets something out of it.
Everybody go follow Delta V Coffee and Solarpunk Steve.